She paid for a veteran's meal out of her own tips. Her manager fired her on the spot in front of a packed cafe. But what no one saw coming was who walked in next and why the entire room fell silent. The lunch crowd always came in like a storm at Riverside Cafe, a modest corner joint tucked between a pharmacy and a laundromat in Eugene, Oregon. 11 a.m. was when everything changed. Coffee mugs clinked louder, receipts printed faster, and the line at the register got longer than anyone had patience for. Emily Carter, 29 years old, had been working double shifts. All weaker sneakers were soaked from a morning rain. Her apron still damp from that accidental iced tea spill earlier, but none of that mattered right now. She had table 6 asking about their missing fries, A to go, order waiting to be boxed, and 2 toddlers screaming under booth 3, like they were auditioning for a horror movie. Still she moved with purpose, efficient, polite, barely flinching, when a customer snapped for more ranch. Her co-worker Zoe Ramirez, a high school senior, was already 2 orders behind and looked like she was going to cry. Emily leaned over and whispered, "You got this, girl. Don't let them see you sweat." Behind the counter, Brent Holloway, the manager, stood with arms folded, eyes, sharp hair gelled back. Like a game show host from the 80s, he was one of those people who seemed born irritated, like life had handed him a rule book and everyone around him kept breaking at Carter. He barked over the sizzle of the fryer. "Table 12 is still waiting on their check. I sent it 10 minutes ago," she replied. Without turning, he scoffed. "Then walk it over yourself. Don't just send things." Emily bit her tongue. She'd worked under Brent long enough to know better than to respond. He never yelled. He didn't need to. The way he spoke, slow and smug, was more effective than shouting. It told you that you were replaceable, that any kindness shown to you was temporary. But at least it paid the bills. She was heading toward the kitchen when she noticed him. An old man, thin like a scarecrow, clothes damp and worn through at the elbows. Standing awkwardly near the door, his white hair was matted, his eyes cloudy, and one of his boots was untied. He looked lost. No one else noticed. Customers were too busy scrolling, sipping, or arguing over receipts. Brent was too busy micromanaging. Emily put the order slip in the window, then stepped toward him. "Sir." She asked gently, "Are you okay?" He blinked twice, looking past her, then slowly turned his head. "I was supposed to meet someone here." I think his voice was hoarse, barely there. Around his neck, tucked under his coat, hung a faded dog tag. She caught sight of a patch on his jacket. It was military, old, maybe Korean War era, maybe Vietnam. "You hungry?" she asked. He smiled. "Or tried I could eat something warm." Emily knew the cafe had a rule: no handouts, no freebies. Brent had even posted a sign in the break room: "We're a business, not a shelter." But that didn't matter now, not when this man looked like he hadn't had a full meal in days. She guided him to an empty booth and helped him sit. She brought him a blanket someone had left behind in the lost and found. Then she walked straight back into the kitchen, slid a 10 from her tips into the register, and called out to the cook, "Marcus, get me a plate. Meatloaf, mashed potatoes, green beans, extra gravy." Marcus gave her a look, but didn't say a word. He'd worked with her long enough to know if she was doing something, it was for a reason. She brought the plate over herself, along with a glass of warm water and some cornbread. The man stared at the plate for a second, then looked up at her like she'd handed him gold. "Thank you," he whispered. "You didn't have to." Emily smiled. "Yeah, I did." But just as she turned to check on her other tables, Brent stepped out from behind the counter. He had seen the whole thing, and from the way his face tightened, Emily knew exactly what was coming next. But she didn't know he'd do it in front of everyone. "You mind telling me what the hell that was?" Brent's voice cut through the clatter of plates like a knife. Emily turned slowly. The cafe hadn't gone quiet yet, but nearby tables were starting to listen, and a mother pushing a stroller paused. The guy at the corner booth took out one earbud. He was cold and confused. "Brent," Emily said, keeping her tone, "even he didn't order anything, and I didn't ask him to. I paid for the meal from my tips." "Doesn't matter," Brent snapped. "That's not how we run things here. You want to feed the whole damn street. To you working for charity now." Her cheeks were burning, but not with shame, with anger. "He's a veteran. He looked hungry." "I did what any decent person would have done." Brent stepped closer, lowering his voice just enough to sound dangerous. "You don't decide who gets free food. You don't run this place. I do. And when you break rules, there are consequences. Then take it out of my paycheck, dock me, write me up, whatever you want, but don't make this into a scene." Brent turned scanned the room and then intentionally loudly called out attention. Folks, this employee just handed out a free meal on our dime, just so we're clear if anyone else needs a handout. This is a new policy. Just ask Emily, she'll foot the bill. The cafe went quiet. Utensils paused midair. Someone at the front laughed. Awkwardly, Emily's heart sank, her fists clenched. But she didn't say a word. The veteran, still sitting at the booth, looked up. Like he didn't quite understand what was happening. He tried to speak, but the words stuck in his throat. Brent wasn't finished. You're done, Carter. Turn in your apron. And get out. That was it. Emily stared at him, stunned. No warning, no discussion, just humiliation. Serve up in front of strangers. Marcus poked his head from the kitchen. Zoe stood frozen by the drink station. No one said a word. The old man stood up slowly. Sir, he said, his voice shaking. She didn't do anything wrong. I didn't mean to cause trouble. Brent waved him off like a nuisance. Sir, please eat your food and stay out of staff business. But the man didn't sit back down. He reached into his coat pocket and pulled out something that shimmered faintly, an old silver badge, worn, but recognizable. A purple heart pin bent at the edges, but unmistakable. I served in K-San. He said, quietly, most of my unit didn't make it. My boys, they'd never let this stand. Brent raised an eyebrow. Excuse me, she showed me more respect than half this country has. In decades, you fired her for doing what's right. Emily stepped forward, her voice firm. Now, please, sir, you don't owe me anything. Just finish your meal, okay? The veteran looked at her, then back at Brent. He placed a pin on the edge of the table and whispered almost himself, they'll know I'm not alone. It sounded strange, like he was talking to ghosts. Emily figured maybe he was just confused, stuck in memories. She untied her apron and folded it carefully. She didn't cry. Not here. Not because of him. Marcus stepped out from the kitchen. This isn't right, he muttered. Brent shot him a look. You want to leave too? Marcus glanced at Emily and shrugged. Just saying. As he walked past the veteran, he gently placed a hand on the man's shoulder. It's okay, he whispered. Really? But the veteran's misty, unfocused eyes met his. They'll come, he said again. They always come. Marcus didn't know what that meant. Outside, the rain picked up again. Emily stood by the bus stop, her hoodie barely keeping her dry. She was still holding her apron in both hands, staring at nothing. Inside, Brent strutted around like he'd won something. But not everyone shared that feeling. Customers murmured. One couple stood up and left. Zoe wiped her eyes behind the counter, and the veteran in the window booth sat silently, eating slowly, like each bite held back a memory too heavy to face. What happened next, no one saw coming. Brent tried to make things feel normal again. He hated losing control. Nothing got under his skin more than someone challenging his authority. So when Emily left without crying, without arguing, without even raising her voice, it rattled him more than he wanted to admit. He paced behind the counter, checking receipt printouts, rearranging napkins, snapping at Zoe when she dropped a fork. The arrogance in his tone was replaced by something sharper. The atmosphere changed. Customers stopped smiling. A few looked uncomfortable. One woman propped her phone against her coffee cup and began filming quietly. Marcus, Brent barked. Another scrambled and hashed for table 5. Orders aren't going to make themselves. Marcus didn't respond right away. Brent snapped his fingers toward the kitchen window. Marcus, you hear me? I hear you, came the calm, distant reply. Then act like it. The old veteran still sat quietly, eating what little he could. His hands trembled as he lifted the fork. Sometimes he stopped chewing and just stared at his plate, like he didn't know where he was. His coat had slipped open a bit, revealing a row of military medals sewn into the lining, barely holding on. Customers began to whisper, now realizing this wasn't just some homeless man looking for warmth. This was someone who had been someone. Brent noticed a shift in attention, but muttered under his breath, "This ain't a soup kitchen." The bell above the door jingled. Then again, and again, for heavy steps entered. Broad shoulders, boots, uniforms. One of them had a sleeve striped high enough to grab the attention of any veteran. No weapons, they didn't need them. They walked with a presence no cafe manager could outmatch. The cafe fell silent. Even the sizzle from the kitchen seemed to fade. One of the soldiers scanned the room. His eyes stopped on the veteran by the window. "Sir," the Marine said, "we got your message." The veteran turned slowly. His lips parted. His gaze was clearer than it had been all day. "I didn't mean to cause trouble," he said, "but she got fired for feeding me." The Marine nodded. "Yes, sir. We heard. We came to make sure that kind of thing doesn't go unanswered." Brent stepped forward. Fake smile at the ready. "Can I help you, gentlemen?" The second Marine, taller, eyes like stone, looked Brent up and down. "You the one in charge here?" "I am, and I'd appreciate it if you didn't interfere with my staff or policies." "Your staff?" said the third Marine, stepping forward. "From what we saw, your staff included a woman who spent her own money to help a veteran. That's not interference. That's character." Brent's voice started to waver. "This is a business. We have rules." She broke them. The first Marine, clearly a captain by his insignia, took a step forward. "You fired a woman for showing compassion to a man who put his life on the line for this country. A man we all know and respect. You didn't just fire her. You humiliated her in front of your staff and in front of strangers. And now you want to hide behind policy?" "It's not personal," Brent muttered. "Sure, look personal," the Marine said. A customer near the front cleared his throat. "She's been here for years. She's always kind. Remembers people's names. Remembers how I take my coffee. More than I can say for anyone else." Then a young man in a hoodie added, "She's the reason I come here, not the food." Zoe stepped forward slowly from the drink station. "She helps me close, even when it's not her shift. Walks me my car when it's dark. She's the only reason I didn't quit after my first week." Brent looked around. Control was slipping fast. "I'm not going to stand here and get ganged up on in my own cafe," he snapped. "We're not here to gang up," the captain said calmly. "We're here to speak up. Big difference." Marcus leaned out from the kitchen again, this time with his apron off. "I'm going to take my break. Might be a long one." The veteran watched everything quietly. His eyes welled up. "I didn't mean for this to happen," he murmured. "You didn't," the captain said. "You just reminded us what matters." But the cafe wasn't done reacting. The next voices weren't in uniform, and that changed everything. Outside, the sidewalk shimmered with leftover rain. Emily sat at the edge of the bus bench, her apron still folded neatly in her lap, like it meant something. Her hands trembled, not from cold. She wasn't angry about getting fired. What hurt was how it happened. Like her kindness had to be stomped out in front of everyone. She stared into a puddle, watching cars drive by without looking up. She didn't know what stung more, the embarrassment or the silence from her co-workers when she walked out. She had expected someone to say something. Marcus, maybe. Zoe. Anyone. But there was nothing. Then her phone buzzed. A message from her older sister. "Still good for dinner Sunday?" She didn't reply. Inside, things were spiraling. "All right, folks," Brent said with a strained smile, clapping his hands. "Let's get back to our meals. Show's over. We're not turning this place into a circus." But it was already too late. People had seen what they saw, and they weren't about to forget it. A woman sitting by the window stood up slowly. Her name was Jean Harlow, a retired nurse who came to Riverside every Thursday after her physical therapy. She walked with a cane and a purpose. "I was in nursing school during the Gulf War," she said clearly, loud enough for everyone to hear. "My brother came home in a flag-covered box. That old man in the booth, he could have been him. And that waitress, she acted better than you ever will, son." Clayton looked like someone had slapped him. Another customer, an Uber driver named Reggie Mathers, who came in every weekday morning and usually kept to himself, spoke next. "I've been coming here since it opened. Never had a problem with anyone except you. You don't lead people by belittling them. You lead by example. Tasha was the example." Someone clapped. Then someone else. It wasn't a standing ovation. It was quiet, awkward, but real. Clayton was losing grip fast. "This is my place," he snapped. "I decide what goes and what doesn't." One of the Marines stepped toward him, this time softer in tone. "Sir, No one's questioning your right to run your business. We're questioning the way you did it. You could have pulled her aside. You could have asked a question. Instead, you humiliated her. Clayton threw up his hands. She gave away product. That cost money. How much did the plate cost you? Jean asked. $10? 12. No answer. How much do you think this will cost you? She continued. When that video hits Facebook, she pointed to the customer who had her phone out the entire time, the one pretending to sip her latte while clearly recording everything since the Marines walked in. Clayton glanced at her. His jaw moved like he wanted to speak, but didn't. Luis came out from the kitchen, wiping his hands with a towel. You've been riding us for years like we're lucky to be here. Tasha never treated any of us that way. She stayed late, showed up early, never complained. She bought Lily lunch her first week here, didn't say a word about it. Lily's voice cracked when she spoke. She helped me get my brakes fixed. Paid half. I didn't even ask. There it was. The weight of the room had shifted completely. Clayton stood in a space that used to be his, but no longer belonged to him. He scanned the room, eyes narrowed. All of you think you're heroes now, huh? Think she's some kind of saint. No one answered. That was louder than any response. In the booth, the veteran gently folded his napkin and placed it on the plate. He reached for the Purple Heart pin, but one of the Marines stopped him. Leave it, he said softly. It belongs here now. The old man nodded once. Tell her thank you, he whispered. Tell her my boys never forget. Then he stood, slower than most, but still with dignity, and followed the Marines out. As the door closed behind them, the entire cafe felt different, heavier somehow. Clayton stared at the napkin on the plate. Then the pen. He said nothing. But outside, someone else was already waiting. Someone who didn't come to eat. It wasn't flashy. No sirens. No flag stickers or bumper slogans. Just a black Chevy Suburban rolling to a quiet stop outside the cafe. The rain had faded to mist by now, barely clinging to the windshield. It idled for a moment before the driver's door clicked open. Tasha, still sitting on the bench, looked up out of reflex. She didn't recognize the vehicle, but there was something different about how it moved. Smooth, deliberate, like it belonged to someone who didn't waste time. The doors opened one after another. 4 men stepped out. Not young, not fresh-faced. These weren't recruits. These were Marines who'd been through things and come out the other side with a calm most people didn't understand. 2 were black, 1 Latino, 1 white. Their uniforms were clean, but lived in. Their boots were regulation, but broken in. The one who stepped forward first had sergeant stripes and the kind of expression that made people straighten up without being told to. Tasha noticed how passersby slowed down to look, but didn't stop. You could tell these men weren't here for coffee. They scanned the cafe windows without saying a word. The sergeant, Reuben Cole, according to the stitched nameplate on his chest, opened the door and walked in. The others followed. The bell rang just the same, but the moment they stepped inside, the energy shifted, like someone had unplugged the room. Reggie, still sitting at the corner table, whispered, "Those ain't tourists." Behind the counter, Clayton froze mid-step. The paper in his hand hung limp. His eyes bounced from one uniform to the next. Sergeant Cole looked around, then spotted the empty booth, the half-eaten meal, the Purple Heart still resting gently on the napkin. He walked over, stood in silence for 3, maybe 4 seconds, then turned to the room. Who fired the woman who gave him this plate? No one answered. Cole didn't raise his voice. He didn't have to. He turned again, this time toward the counter. You, he asked, locking eyes with Clayton. Clayton swallowed. Look, I don't know what this is about. Yes, you do, Cole interrupted. You know exactly what this is about. The tallest of the Marines, a man with sharp eyes and a scar curving under his chin, stepped closer. His name was Walter Haggerty. He served with our unit's grandfather in Vietnam, Cole said. The man who taught us what it meant to be brothers. Walter doesn't say much, Cole added, but when he does, we listen. So when he called, said one of our guys had been helped by someone who showed more loyalty than he's seen in years, and then got fired for it. Yeah, we made time. Clayton laughed nervously. This is getting blown way out of proportion. She broke policy. She gave away food without permission. The Marine with the scarf folded his arms. You know how many policies get broken when someone's life is on the line? When a decision has to be made in real time. We were taught to lead by example. Sound like she was two. Another Marine, stockier, softer spoken, pointed to the Purple Heart. You see that pin? That doesn't belong on your table. It belongs to people who understand sacrifice. Clearly, that ain't you. Customers remained silent. Some pulled out phones. Some just watched. Tasha, from the bench outside, couldn't see exactly what was going on, but when she noticed the veterans inside, she stood up instinctively. She didn't recognize any of them, but something told her she was involved in this, whether she liked it or not. She stepped close to the window and saw the booth, empty except for the plate, and the pin. Her breath caught in her throat. Back inside, Clayton tried one last time to wrest back control. I'm not here to be lectured, he said. This is my business. You don't like it? Don't eat here. Cole nodded once. Fair. But just know we don't forget either. And we don't stay quiet. When someone disrespects one of our own, or someone who protects them, the Marine with the scar leaned in, just enough for Clayton to hear. You fired the wrong one. But they weren't the only ones who showed up that day. Word had already spread, and the next voices came from even closer to home. Tasha didn't want to go back inside. She stood by the window like a ghost outside her own story, watching a scene she couldn't believe was real. For Marines in full uniform, standing in her old workplace, holding the room in a kind of stillness even Clayton couldn't break. She stepped back, unsure what to do. Then the cafe door swung open. It wasn't a customer or a Marine. It was Lily, clutching her apron, cheeks red from crying. Tasha, she said, rushing forward. You need to come back inside. Please. I'm not trying to make it worse, Tasha replied. You didn't make it worse, Lily said. You did the only thing that made any of this make sense. She gently took Tasha's wrist. Please. Inside, things weren't calming down. Clayton stood behind the register, arms crossed, face hard, but his eyes darted, the look of a man who knew he was losing control. The Marines hadn't moved. They didn't need to. When Tasha walked in, a few people actually clapped. Not loud or showy, just soft, quiet, respectful, like people who knew what she had done was both simple and rare. Clayton's voice cracked slightly. I made it clear you no longer work here. I'm not here for the job, Tasha said. I'm here because a man who served this country deserved a warm meal, and because I'm tired of acting like kindness needs permission. Sergeant Cole turned to her respectful. Miss Melrose, we're sorry you were treated that way. It shouldn't have gone down like that. Tasha nodded slightly. Thank you. One of the Marines, the tall one with the scar, looked around the room. You all watched this happen. Some of you filmed it. Some just stared. But someone needs to say it out loud. You don't punish people for being decent. Clayton barked a bitter laugh. Oh, come on. She didn't cure cancer. She handed out a plate of meatloaf. She handed out dignity. Cole said calmly, that counts for something in our book. A woman near the front, Cheryl Miles, who ran a hair salon 2 doors down, stood up and crossed her arms. I've seen how you treat your staff, Clayton. The notes, the threats. You didn't fire her because of that plate. You fired her because she reminded people you don't care. That's not true, Clayton muttered. Reggie, still sipping cold coffee, spoke again. Man, I've sat in that corner every morning for 2 years. You've never once said good morning. You walk around like we all owe you something. Well, guess what? You're the one who lost something today. Clayton stepped out from behind the counter, hands on his hips. You all want to make me the villain? Go ahead, but none of you pay the bills. Luis, standing near the kitchen window, finally spoke. We keep the lights on. We clean up. We take your crap and smile through it. And the one person who made this place feel human, you fired her. This is mutiny. Clayton snapped. No, Cole said. This is accountability. Just then the bell above the door rang again. A man in his early 50s walked in, military haircut, navy jacket. A local contractor who often worked with veterans. Charles Fenner. "I heard what happened," he said. Didn't take long for the story to hit the group chat. "Tasha, if you're not already hired somewhere else, I'd be proud to offer you a job at our center. Better pay, better hours, and a place where people actually respect the ones who make it all work." Tasha blinked. She hadn't expected that. Not here. Not this fast. "Why would you do that?" she asked. Charles smiled. "Because Walter Haggerty isn't just a veteran. He's my uncle, and I trust him more than I trust most people walking this earth." Clayton looked stunned. Cheryl looked around. "Well, looks like you just lost your best employee and half your regulars. Hope the math works out, Clayton." The Purple Heart still sat on the table, a quiet, shining reminder of what had started all this. But it wouldn't be the only thing that left a mark. The town was already talking, and some things can't be swept under a rug. By the time Charles Fenner finished speaking, the cafe wasn't just a restaurant anymore. It had become a courtroom. Every word had weight. Every silence meant something. Clayton's face had gone from smug to stiff to pale. He scanned for support. But even the dishwasher, barely old enough to drive, had come out from the back, arms crossed. His name was Omar Benford, 17, usually quiet, head down, earbuds in, but not today. He cleared his throat. "Can I say something?" Clayton raised an eyebrow. "Unless it's to go wash dishes." But Omar didn't flinch. "I was in the back when she gave him that meal. I heard the whole thing. She pulled $10 from her own tips. She told Louise to ring it in. She didn't sneak anything." Clayton opened his mouth, but Omar didn't stop. "And you know what else? She's the only one who ever asks if I need a ride home. I live 2 buses and a long walk away. No one else even knows that." The room was still. "She got fired for doing something my mom would have done." Omar said, eyes down for a second. "And if she's not good enough to work here, then I'm probably not either." "You quitting?" Clayton snapped. Omar shrugged one shoulder. "I don't know yet, but I know I'm not scared of you." From the booth near the front, a man who hadn't said much all day finally stood. A trucker, Lenny Duval, salt and pepper beard, weathered hands. He pulled out his wallet and dropped the $20 on the counter. "For the veterans' lunch," he said, "and for the waitress who should still be here." Then he walked out. That started something. One by one, customers followed, standing, grabbing jackets, leaving bills on tables, nodding to Tasha like they knew her, even if they didn't. By the 6th person, Clayton's voice had turned gravelly. "This is ridiculous." "No," Lily said softly. "This is what happens when people stop being afraid of you." Louise finally stepped out from behind the kitchen window, wiped his hands on a rag, and set his chef's knife on the counter with quiet finality. "I'm out," he said. "I've worked in 6 kitchens. Never had to look a good person in the eye while they got tossed for being human." Clayton tried one more time to speak, like he still had authority. "You people think I'm the enemy? I built this place. I put in the years." "Then it's a shame you forgot who helped you keep it running," said Cheryl from the doorway. She still hadn't left. Tasha hadn't moved much through all of it. She just stood there, clutching her apron like it still meant something, even though it didn't belong to her anymore. Sergeant Cole turned to her. "We don't speak up for just anyone. But today wasn't about charity. It was about respect. What you did wasn't small." "I didn't do it for attention," she said quietly. "He just looked hungry." "Exactly," said the Marine with the scar. "And you gave him more than food." Omar walked up, a little awkward. I don't usually say stuff like this, but thanks. I was having a bad day, and you reminded me people still care." Tasha managed a small smile. "Thanks, Omar." Then Lily approached, biting her lip. "I'm sorry I didn't say anything when he fired you. I should have." "You didn't owe me that," Tasha replied. "But thank you for saying it now." Outside, more people had gathered, some curious, some concerned. A few already had their phones out. Whatever had happened inside, it wasn't staying inside. A reporter from the Eugene Ledger stepped in and asked softly, Do you mind if I ask what happened here? Clayton groaned audibly. Are you serious? Reggie leaned back in his chair, arms folded. Oh, it's serious now. But the real shift didn't happen inside the cafe. It happened hours later, when the story hit the internet, and strangers started weighing in from thousands of miles away. By late afternoon, the phones at Riverside Cafe wouldn't stop ringing. But these weren't reservation calls. They weren't takeout orders. They were strangers from out of town, some angry, some shocked, some just curious. The video Cheryl had taken of the Marines confronting Clayton, and of Tasha walking back in with her dignity intact, had already made its way to local Facebook groups, then Twitter, then veteran forums. Within 5 hours, it was viral. Comments poured in. That manager should be ashamed. She did more in a moment than most people do in a lifetime. Someone please give this woman a better job. She deserves more than that dump. My grandfather was a Marine. I'd eat wherever that lady worked. Tasha didn't even know the video existed until Lily texted her a link. That evening, she watched it in silence from her small apartment off West 7th. Her living room barely held the couch, but she sat on its edge, phone in hand, mouth pressed shut. She watched herself walk out of the cafe, then back in, then speak up. I'm here because I'm tired of acting like kindness needs permission. She heard her own voice and didn't recognize it. Not in a bad way. Just different. Stronger than she'd thought. She set the phone down. Not long after, her inbox started filling up. Reporters, a local podcast guy, someone from a veterans nonprofit in Salem. But one email stood out. Subject, job opportunity. Stand with us. From Jordan Malik, Operations Director, Haggerty Veterans Outreach Center. The name Haggerty gave her pause. It had to be connected to Walter. Miss Melrose, my name is Jordan Malik. I run the day-to-day operations at the Haggerty Veterans Outreach Center here in Eugene. Walter is a dear friend of our founder, and one of the reasons this center exists. He told us what you did, and then we saw it for ourselves. We're currently expanding our front-end team and looking for someone with warmth, grace, and good judgment. We'd be honored to have you join us. Full-time with benefits, better hours. You've already shown us who you are. Let us show you what it feels like to be valued for it. Tasha read it 3 times. She didn't know if she wanted to cry or laugh. She couldn't remember the last time someone had called her graceful. She dialed the number. Jordan answered immediately. Miss Melrose? Yes, this is Tasha. I hope the offer didn't catch you off guard. It did, honestly. In a good way. Well, we had your name floating around here all day. Walter hasn't stopped talking about you. I didn't even know his name, she said quietly. He remembers everything, just not always in the right order. But one thing he said clearly, she saw me. That's more than most do. They talked for 20 minutes. Jordan didn't push. He explained the job, front desk, connecting people to services, organizing meal drop-offs, listening, showing up. That, he said, is what we call service. She said yes before the call even ended. The next morning, she dressed like it was her first day of school. Same bus, same stop, same weather, but a whole new life. The Haggerty Center wasn't fancy, but it was warm. Real people, real purpose. Near the entrance, someone had already printed out a still frame from a video. Her, standing in the cafe, Marines behind her. Below it, in bold marker, you don't punish people for being decent. Walter was there too, sitting in the lobby with a paper cup of coffee and a crossword puzzle he wasn't really solving. You made it, he said with a soft smile. She sat next to him. Yeah, she whispered. I made it. But while she was moving forward, the cafe she left behind was heading for a reckoning of its own. Because when the internet picks up a story like this, the consequences don't stop at the door. By the time Monday came around, Riverside Cafe wasn't the same place. The morning crowd? Nearly gone. Only 2 tables were occupied, both out-of-towners who hadn't heard the story. The regulars? Vanished. Even the crossword and black coffee crowd? Gone. Clayton stood behind the register, pretending to rearrange receipts. But really, he was just avoiding the truth. The cafe fell hollow. Empty chairs echoed louder than footsteps. No line, no laughter, no music. Even Louise's old spot in the kitchen had been filled by a temp, one who didn't talk much. Clayton had always walked around like he owned the block. Now he walked slower, spoke softer. The pride he once wore like a badge of honor? Because when the internet picks up a story like this, the consequences don't stop at the door. It had faded because the video didn't just go viral. It got picked up by Oregon Today, then reshared by a Marine Corps Instagram page with 2.4 million followers. A local news outlet ran a story titled "Waitress Fired for Feeding Veteran Finds New Purpose at Haggerty Center." The comments under the headline were brutal. Shame on the cafe. That manager needs to step down. Tasha Melrose is a local hero. The real disgrace here isn't the firing. It's how long it took people to say something. Even worse for Clayton, a petition was circulating with over 15,000 signatures and counting. It demanded new ownership or a public apology from Clayton himself. Neither seemed likely to happen. He tried to do damage control, posting a weak statement on the cafe's Facebook page. "We regret any misunderstandings and are committed to ensuring all customers and employees are treated with respect in the future." People weren't buying it. One comment read, "You didn't regret anything until your table's emptied." Another simply said, "You lost the heart of your cafe the second you fired her." Meanwhile, over at the Haggerty Veterans Outreach Center, things couldn't have looked more different. Tasha had just finished helping a woman fill out paperwork to access housing support. It wasn't glamorous work. There were no lights, no cameras, but it felt important, solid, real. The break room smelled like coffee and fresh cinnamon rolls donated by a local bakery after they saw the video. Staff passed around small jokes and kind words, and every now and then someone would gently tap Tasha's shoulder and say, "Saw you on the news," like it was some kind of secret handshake. But Tasha didn't let the attention get to her. She knew this wasn't about fame. It was about the fact that she could finally breathe. That same afternoon, a woman walked into the outreach center with hesitation in her step. She looked out of place, business casual clothes, clutching a handbag like a shield. "I'm looking for Tasha," she said at the front desk. Tasha came out wiping her hands on a paper towel. "That's me?" The woman introduced herself as Eileen March, Clayton's silent business partner. She'd put up the initial capital for Riverside Cafe, but rarely got involved in day-to-day operations. "I just wanted to say I didn't know what happened until last night. I saw the video. I was horrified." Tasha nodded politely. "That's kind of you to say." Eileen looked like she wanted to crawl into her own purse. "I should have stepped in sooner, but I wasn't paying attention. That's on me. I've started the process of separating myself from Clayton. The cafe is being appraised now. We're putting it up for sale." Tasha's eyebrows lifted. "Wow, that's big." "Yeah, I think it's time for new leadership. The town deserves better. You deserve better." Before leaving, Eileen pulled something from her bag, a small envelope. "I know this doesn't make up for anything, but it's from my own account. No strings attached." Tasha looked at the envelope, then at Eileen. "I appreciate that truly, but I didn't do what I did expecting anything back." "I know," Eileen said. "That's exactly why you deserve it." When she left, Tasha didn't even open the envelope right away. She tucked it in her bag and went back to work. She had people to help. But as the day ended and the lights dimmed at the outreach center, there was only one thing left for her to say. The truth she'd been carrying quietly all along. It was near closing time at the Haggerty Veterans Outreach Center. The front lobby had emptied out, and the hum of voices and footsteps had softened into quiet paperwork and the gentle tap of a printer. Tasha sat at her desk flipping through intake forms. Outside the window, the sun dipped behind the trees, lining the edge of the parking lot, painting the sky orange. Walter Haggerty was still there, sitting in his favorite chair by the front, blanket over his knees, staring out the window like he was waiting for something. "You need anything before I lock up?" she asked, walking over to him. He shook his head. "Just thinking about what, back then when I was in country, you didn't get far if you didn't trust the people around. Didn't matter what color they were, what they believed. Just mattered if they had your back." Tasha leaned against the wall beside him. I don't know if I did anything special, she said. It was just a meal. He turned to her. That's what makes it special. She didn't respond right away. I used to wonder if I'd ever matter, she said. I worked hard, tried to be decent, but it always felt like I was one small step away from being disposable. Walter looked her dead in the eye. People like you keep things standing quietly, without noise, without applause. That manager, he thought power meant being in charge, but real power, real respect comes from what people say about you when you're not in the room. Tasha smiled. You sure you're not supposed to be writing books or something? He laughed. Nah, I just live long enough to recognize decency when I see it. There was a quiet moment, the kind of silence that doesn't feel empty. Then she asked, Did you really call those Marines after I left? Walter shook his head slowly. I didn't have to. One of them checks in on me every Sunday. I just told him what happened. Told him a good woman lost her job for being kind. Tasha blinked, and that was enough to bring all four of them down there. He gave a dry chuckle. You don't know what you stirred up, girl. When you're good to one of us, you're good to all of us. She didn't know what to say to that. Later, as she walked to the bus stop, the envelope from Eileen March still sat untouched in her bag. She thought about the past few days, the cold rain, the moment she stood over Walter's booth and decided she wasn't going to wait for permission to be kind, and then the fallout, the Marine boots on tile floors, the crowd turning quiet, her own voice rise and say something that wasn't rehearsed, just real. She remembered how it felt to be seen. Not praised, not pitted, just seen. That's what stuck at home. She finally opened the envelope. Inside was a handwritten note and a cashier's check for $5,000. Thank you for showing the rest of us what integrity looks like. I hope this helps you build something better. Eileen, she set it down carefully, unsure whether to cry or not. Not because of the money, but because for once, doing the right thing didn't end in silence. She picked up her phone and opened the video again, not to watch herself, but to read the comments beneath. She's the reason I believe in people again. There's hope, and her name is Tasha Melrose. What if we were all just a little more like her? That one got to her, because it wasn't about heroism. It wasn't about standing on a table and shouting. It was just about not turning away when someone needed something. That was all, and it was enough. Life isn't made of grand gestures. It's made of small choices stacked like bricks. The choice to listen, to speak up, to help, to give even when no one's watching. And sometimes those choices change more than just a moment. They change the people watching. The ones too tired, too afraid, or too used to looking the other way. Tasha never asked for recognition. She asked for humanity. And in the end, that's what she got. If this story moved you, share it. Remind someone that kindness still matters. And if you haven't already, subscribe for more stories that shine a light on everyday courage. Because sometimes it only takes one person to remind us who we're supposed to be.